All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's City Council study session for Monday, February 24th. We have 3 items for tonight. Up first is Eric Bertoluzzi and Jeff Shoemaker, members of Englewood Arts, here to provide council with a report on the 2024 happenings and what's coming for 2025. Good evening, Eric.
Good evening, Mayor, City Manager, council members. We're so happy to be here tonight, and we requested this meeting or this opportunity to present a review of the Englewood Arts 2024 year, which was the most financially successful year in the 25 years of our existence. And I'm here with the chair of Englewood Arts, the esteemed Jeff Shoemaker. If you know anything about the Shoemaker family, you know, the very special family in this Denver metropolitan area. And I'm so happy to be here with Jeff tonight. And we'd like to begin our video presentation. And following that, please ask any questions that you would like. Englewood Arts, enriching the life of the community through arts education and performance in art, music, theater, and dance. Violin instructor Summer Lusk completed the third year of providing group lessons to classes of students at the Joe Shoemaker School. Nearly 100 underprivileged students have participated in the program. Englewood Arts supplies all the instruments.
Englewood AC Maddox has partnered with Englewood Arts for over 10 years to provide music instruction for our students. This year, Michelle's dance class has been super engaging and fun for our students and staff. The students are so excited to go to dance class and tell their parents about it.
The Englewood Arts Strings Attached program of private lessons enrolls 55 students ages 5 to 72. The superb instructors gave more than 1,030-minute lessons on violin, cello, piano, and guitar during the past year, most taking place in the Civic Center. We are happy to provide an instrument for any student in need.
Hi, I'm Zoe, and I've been taking piano lessons for 4 years. My teacher is Miss Jeanette, and I love her. She's like one of my family. Piano is my favorite instrument to play. I can also play the recorder and the ukulele.
The Strings Attached May and December recitals are heartwarming experiences for family and friends of the students. Symphony Spotlight has a 34-year history of performing in schools throughout Colorado, with an ensemble of 13 Colorado symphony musicians. The performances include demonstrations of individual instruments with light classical and American popular songs. Our monthly Music of the Masters concerts feature highly acclaimed local, national, and international artists. The Saturday afternoon performances in Hampton Hall are attended by loyal, appreciative, and enthusiastic crowds from throughout the metropolitan area.
And I've been coming to Englewood Arts and these wonderful performances since the very beginning. I guess this is our 25th year, and it's really incredible. I really enjoy it, and to have it right here in our own town, world-class performances.
Eric is a tremendous guy. He does a beautiful job. He brings up the best musicians possible.
What I love is that stage in there and how intimate it all is, how few people are there, and the acoustics are just magnificent. So we just always enjoy it.
Yep.
Master piano technician Rick Holcomb made the final adjustments to our gorgeous Steinway concert grand piano, which we purchased in January and revealed at the March 16th concert. Hampton Hall has become an attractive destination for uses by organizations and individuals. A small sampling of events includes the Korean Jubilee Ensemble, the Sacred Grace Englewood Church every Sunday morning, and Lisa Trujillo's dance recitals. We are excited about the collection of original paintings and etchings by Ukrainian artist Dmitry Ashkazov. 28 works are hanging in Hampton Hall, the Green Room, the Copenhagen Studio, and one of the paintings of the Gothic Theater is in the prosecutor's area. Our 2024 major expenses were our teachers, performing artists, executive director, strings attached manager, development manager, and website manager. Our major sources of revenue were the Scientific and Cultural Facilities District, individual contributors, strings attached tuition, and Hampton Hall rentals. The 2024 income was approximately $255,000, which exceeded expenses by $46,000. Jeff Shoemaker and I had the privilege of performing for a full house at the June 8th benefit concert. On behalf of Englewood Arts, I want to express our gratitude to the City of Englewood for granting us the use of space in the Civic Center that we call our home. We are deeply appreciative and thankful. Now in our 25th year, we regard our partnership with the City of Englewood to be one of the most vital components of our existence. Okay, thank you again from the bottom of our hearts that we have space to do our work here in Englewood. And now I'd like to introduce to you the one and only Jeff Shoemaker, who will, I think, introduce some of our board members.
Thank God it's only one and only. First of all, let me start with offering my thanks to all of you for allowing the time before you today. It's an honor to introduce to you Kevin Ebert, an Englewood resident who is our treasurer. I'm going to kind of do this. Gina Cutright, our secretary, her husband Jerry. We have Dimitri Gershon-Gorn, who is here, and we have Christine Adams, also an Englewood resident here. It's important for you all to understand this is a volunteer board, fully volunteer. And what do they do for this organization? They participate in quarterly board meetings, they engage, they advise our executive director, they attend events, they bring other people to this magnificent facility, Hampton Hall. They provide support personally, they ask others to provide personal support. And again, our job as a board is to support our huge overhead staff, which is one guy part-time, whose name is Eric Bertoluzzi. What's the number one priority of Englewood Arts? And that is to support students. How do we do that? We provide private lessons, as you've seen, music and dance classes, strings attached recitals, string program at Joe Shoemaker School, part of DPS. And yes, part of the goal of Englewood Arts is to always start with the city of Englewood, but also expand the mission of Englewood Arts beyond that. And then, of course, Symphony Spotlight. And when these ensembles come in, all scripted by this guy, it's all about engaging young children in this brief, are they 45-minute performances? Is that 50? That within 45 minutes, these kids hear performance after performance after performance, instrument after instrument after instrument, and the clapping and the excitement and the attention, and they get that for free. We are so grateful for the city allowing Englewood Arts to be part of this amazing infrastructure. And we think we bring back for that gift the engagement of spaces, my opinion is one, man, that might not be otherwise occupied, but they all provide benefit to the citizens and the city of Englewood. We're grateful to all of you for allowing this partnership. Hampton Hall is the bread and butter of this organization. I think there's co-benefit there. And I'll finish with this. I think the best is yet to come. And personally, I'm grateful to all of you on council, and I'm grateful to the administration at the city of Englewood. Partnerships are rare today. They're increasingly challenging. And so we are grateful to all of you, and we thank you for your time today. Thank you very much.
Jeff and Eric, thank you very much for the presentation and also for what you do for the city of Englewood and for those that are underserved. So really appreciate that. We'll open it up for questions, see if anybody wants to kick us off. And actually, so I guess I'll start off real quick. Actually, I'll just get to just what I'm seeing as the recommendation. Jeff and Eric, I'm not sure who exactly would want to answer this, but it looks like you are asking to extend the current agreement for another 5 years. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Thanks for the question. Back in 2024, early in 2024, we presented a formal request to the city manager's office for a 5-year extension of the Hampton Hall use/management agreement. And recently, we've been engaged in discussions with the city attorney's office and the city manager's office regarding the extension. Hampton Hall is a wonderful place. It's like a destination. It's a shining light for the city. People from all over the state, actually some people from around the country use Hampton Hall. They're very happy to use it. We're happy to have them there. And they always express their pleasure with that room. And it's a window to the world for us, for Englewood Arts, because we get to meet so many people from various parts of the state, various activities that they have, birthdays, churches, comedians from the Ukraine have been there, and you saw one lady's a very popular star in Kyiv who was here doing a performance. And we just make contact with the many parts of the community that wouldn't regularly happen if it weren't for Hampton Hall being here. And another thing you might not know or you forgot is that it wasn't necessarily, this management agreement wasn't necessarily a gift to us. We were instrumental in presenting this possibility of using that room for the purposes that it is right now. And Englewood Arts has contributed close to $100,000 of real money into making that room a reality. So in a way, I guess we feel like we've earned the use of that room, but we're very grateful to have this association or affiliation with the city for the use of Hampton Hall.
Thank you very much. Member Wright, go ahead with your question.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you for being here, and I'm I appreciate all the support that you have here. I do have a couple of questions. The first one I have, Mr. Shoemaker, your name, and then we talk about Shoemaker School. How are you, or are you affiliated with that school or related at all to that school?
My only official, whoops. The affiliation is it's named after my father, Joe Shoemaker, State Senator Joe Shoemaker, creator of Auraria Campus, Joe Shoemaker, founder of Greenway Foundation, Joe Shoemaker. I had no, I'm a former state legislator, council member. People think there was some inside deal to its naming. There was not. The school was named. It's right on Cherry Creek. I ran Greenway Foundation for 40 years. If you like your parks, rivers, creeks, and paths along the river, we had a little bit to do with that. And so it's named after Joe by complete coincidence, but it is right on the cusp of the creek, and very honestly, my family has helped support the ability for that violin program to come into the school at no cost to the city of Englewood.
Okay. One of my questions also is there's a lot of kids that are homeschooled nowadays. Do you reach out to those homeschooling programs and invite them into these new music programs? Because that's not something that homeschoolers often have an opportunity for music programs.
Okay, Kim, thank you for the question. We actually have a number of homeschooled students enrolled in the program, the violin program and the piano program. So we do our best to reach out to the community and get participation from as many segments of the community as possible. I have to admit, it's not an easy thing to accomplish because there's a lot of competition for the attention of the kids. Not like when I was a youngster. You know, the schools made the instruments available and we jumped at the opportunity. But now maybe the kids are a little more interested in computer games. It's a lot easier to do that than to learn to play the violin. But, sure.
Let me give you an example how life works. By non-coincidence, I had lunch today at One Barrel. The manager's children attend Englewood schools. I'm talking about what I'm doing. She has a 6-year-old first grader, and she learned about this, and before the end of this week, we are going to work to allow her daughter to become a piano student because of Englewood Arts. So, you know, it's one kid, one time, one opportunity. That's how we work it.
Okay, thank you so much.
I might add that the tuition that we charge is nominal. It's less than 40% of what the open market would request from private students. And but we feel it's important. Somebody who might be thinking, why don't you just give the lessons away free? But we feel that we need to see some kind of commitment from the students and the families. Otherwise, they'll value it at nothing. And so it's taking a while. It has taken a while for the students and the parents to get with the program, take their lessons regularly, inform the teachers if they can't make it to a lesson. And thanks to Gina Cutright, who happens to be my daughter, she does a great job of collecting the tuition from these families. So, thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Bertoluzzi and Mr. Shoemaker, for the lovely video. Appreciate having the musical program going on in Englewood here. I think it's critical to provide musical training to our kids. My question is about Hamden Hall. I see the revenue was $37,000 for the rental income from that. How often is that rent? How many days a week, or how many total days in the year? If you have those numbers I just want to see how well utilized that resource is.
Well, the rentals happen maybe 40 times a year, and it's usually one day. Sometimes it's a full day, sometimes it's just an afternoon and an evening, depending on what the event is. A great group called the Egyptian Study Society meets there once a month on a Monday. So I'm here to watch what they're doing, and then I sometimes pop my head into your council meetings over there to see what kind of drama is going on. So I'm back and forth. Anyway, the room is available a lot more than what has been used. So, but the city's been very cooperative with us. Anytime an inquiry arrives at the city, if it's a rental use, the city always contacts us, and then we try to close the deal from there.
So what I'm hearing is you would like to see it utilized more than it currently is?
Absolutely.
All right, very good. That was my question. Thank you.
Any further questions from members of council? Go ahead, Member Noonan-Camp.
I don't know if this is a question for Inglewood Arts or for maybe the city attorney. But first I'll say that the video was lovely. It's lovely to see what you were doing. I know some community members who participate both in performances and in classes and have rave reviews, so thank you so much for sharing. With the extension, excuse me, for an additional 5 years, as I'm sure you are aware, there's been a lot of discussion about the future of this building. If the future of the building were to change before the 5-year term is up, how would we approach that? Maybe this is for the city attorney.
I'm happy to answer that. I actually worked on the draft amendment. Either party has a period of time they can give notice to the other to terminate the contract prior to expiration of the 5-year term. So should we need to do so, that's in there for the city, and that's also in there for Inglewood Arts.
That's very helpful. And Mr. Bertoluzzi or maybe Mr. Shoemaker, you can answer this. How do you feel about the potential of that changing? And can you let us know what the benefit for you is of having a 5-year home and some predictability versus if we were to renew this on a year-over-year basis?
I'm sorry, but even though I have my hearing aids in,
No, it's okay.
can you ask your, please?
Absolutely. If we were to do the 5-year renewal, if the building use changes, we decide to partner with a redeveloper, are you aware that that could be a possibility, and what are your thoughts on that? Are you comfortable with going into that agreement? And then also, is there a benefit to you of having a 5-year agreement versus us renewing it year over year? Can you speak to that?
Well, we prefer a 5-year because we have requests that come in during the year for the next year, and if we don't have the assurance that we'll be the managing entity of the hall, we could lose some of those rental opportunities because we can't guarantee it. But in the application, there's actually we put a little paragraph in there that states that the city owns the building, and if something should happen to the building, that it's no longer here, then that application and that promise that we've made to them to use the room, we can't really honor. So,
Okay, thank you.
How often do you want to see us coming back every year asking for an extension? So, here's the bottom line, 5 years, let's see what happens next year. Let's see what happens in 2 years. But I think it's in your best interests that we request a 5-year, and then, Counselor, let's see where it goes from there.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Member Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Bertoluzzi and Mr. Shoemaker, for coming. I appreciate the program. In the past, it seems like we've used to have in the agreement that you had to provide so much programming and do so many things. I don't see any of that in this. Does the city attorney want to address that?
Let me pull up a copy of the agreement.
Okay. I mean, originally when it started, it was to engage that area. Go ahead, Mr. Bertoluzzi.
right, Mike Flaherty, if you remember, we discussed this when we were first writing the original agreement, and we put in there that we would commit to having 30 events per year, and we always exceed that.
Okay, perfect. I appreciate that. And then I do have one other question, and it's the same question I asked a year, or maybe it's been a couple of years now, about a list of the people that have come in and rented Hampton Hall and what they've paid, because the room really belongs to the citizens and we need openness and transparency. So is that a possibility to get a list of that, of all of the people that came in?
Yes, I'll be able to put that together and supply it to the city manager's office. That wasn't the purpose of this. We were just giving a general overview of 2024.
Right, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate that you didn't give it, but for us to make a decision, I think it's some information that we need as a council. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.
Member Wright, do you have another question? Go ahead.
I just need clarification, please. When you mentioned 30 events per year, is that 30 musical events or 30 rental events? Because that makes a big difference to me.
That's not specified in the agreement. It's just 30 events.
Okay, thank you.
Member Pring.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for the presentation. The music was lovely. It was a nice start to the meeting, so thank you for that. Ongoing supporter here of Inglewood Arts and Strings Attached especially. I had several children go through the program, so a big supporter of an ongoing presence for a very thoughtful use of the space here in the city center. I wanted to ask a few follow-up questions, one to build on what Member Neunenkamp was referencing. If the city does shift purposes of the building and the space is no longer available, have you begun conversations potentially with Inglewood schools or other options to look for a future home were it to come about that the space was no longer available?
I guess that's a bridge we'll cross when we come to it.
Okay.
We don't.
Okay. And then also I wanted to add on to Member Russell's request for the list of organizations or groups that rent the space. If we could also have added to that any groups that use the space free of charge, if there are any, so that we have a comprehensive look at who's using the space and what the rentals are and what free usage might be.
Yes, there have been a few free of charge uses for the room. And be happy, I will include that
Okay.
on the list. Sure, be happy to.
Thank you. And then lastly for me, when you have a good year and your revenues are exceeding the expenses for running Inglewood Arts, how does that profit get used? Does it get reinvested back into the program? Are you paying to bring in more performers or a higher caliber of performances into the space? How does
Sure.
that work?
There's no guarantee that 2025 is going to be as profitable as 2024 was. There are a couple of reasons for that, but I mean, one was that out of the blue, we received a $15,000 contribution from a person who attends our concerts. I've never met her. I've been sending her thank yous every year for $100 contributions. And then I get this one that takes my breath away on the 26th of December. So that's why our individual contributions were up over $15,000 from 2023. So I guess, well, now I forgot what your question was, but we have extended, as I said the last time, sometimes it's better to give than to receive, and we've allowed certain groups and organizations to use the room free of charge, but it's not a whole lot. There are not a whole lot of them.
One sentence, plan for today, save for tomorrow, especially right now.
Got it. Okay.
Thank
That's
you.
helpful. Thank you so much for your answers.
Thank you.
We do have an investment fund, and so some of that excess or that profit from 2024 has been invested.
In a bank in Inglewood.
Yeah,
City-
that's true. That's true. That's true. But I like to have money in the bank. I don't know about you, but it gives Englewood Arts leverage for when opportunities arise for new programs. And if we don't have that money, then there goes the opportunity. And we want to be as useful, impactful in the community as we can, because arts education is not what it used to be 50 years ago. So,
City Attorney Niles, I see your light on.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I wanted to close the loop on Councilmember Russell's question. I had to pull up the 2016 original agreement and then the 2023 amendment to confirm it's all still in there. The original 2016 agreement does require a minimum of 30 events, as Mr. Bertoluzzi stated. And in the 2023 amendment, that was continued, that was unchanged. And then there will be an additional amendment brought to council for consideration and potential approval, and that's unchanged. So it's proposed to continue in full force and effect.
Thank you.
Any further questions for members of council? I know this was just intended as an informational meeting. Sounds like there's additional information that this council is requesting prior to moving forward with the 5-year agreement. But Mr. Shoemaker, Mr. Bertoluzzi, thank you very much for your time tonight. I see your light on, so go ahead if there's
I just have one more question.
Sure.
It's just a general question. I would like to know how the city regards the relationship between the city and Englewood Arts. Does the city regard us as a partner, or do they regard us as an organization that is affiliated with the city?
Well, Mr. Bertoluzzi, I see you as a partner. I'm very appreciative of what you bring to the city of Inglewood. The fact that you are also providing arts to the underserved, we didn't really get into that point today, but what you are providing to Inglewood schools from your previous presentations, I'm very appreciative of that. So I want to do what is possible to keep you here, to continue to serve the underserved here in Inglewood, and you're also bringing the arts to the community overall. So what you're providing on the nights that you are providing the space for many of the events and the orchestra events, I'm very appreciative of Mr. Bertoluzzi, Mr. Shoemaker. You guys have done a lot for the city, so I'm very appreciative of that. So
Thank you very much. So as a follow-up, I'd just like to say that maybe in the 2025 year-end report, we could be mentioned as a partner for the city.
We could find the space for that, Mr. Bertoluzzi, so thank you very much for that.
There's only one Eric Bertoluzzi, everybody, and God bless you for that happening, okay?
Well,
Thank you.
I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you very much for the update, and we'll be in touch soon, so thank you so much.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. All right. We are going to be moving on to the second item. We're going to talk numbers. We're going to talk budget. We got Director of Finance Kevin Engels here to provide us an overview of, I think it's the December, was it the December update? No, it's January. It's the January update tonight. Good evening, Kevin.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Kevin Engels, Director of Finance. Yes, we'll be looking at the January 2025 monthly financial report. When we bring the February report next month, we will give you a preliminary December 2024 report as well. So through January, revenues are just a little bit above budget. It's pretty early in the year to identify any trends. Just having 1 month of results, but you'll see we're at 9.5% of the budget. It's tracking in line with what we were last year and just down about 14,000 per year to date. Expenditures, right along budget again, 9%. There is one timing issue here. Well, there's several, but one that's significant, and that is in 2025, there's an extra payroll versus 2024, and you'll see that on the next slide highlighted a little bit better. But that's why most departments are above the budget from last year, or the spending from last year, excuse me. So there's that personnel line item. Looks like it's way up, and it is, but that's because of the timing of the one payroll. That will even out when we do the February report. Contractual services, that's down. That's timing of some big contracts. Some were paid in January of last year. Looks like most of those will be paid in February of this year. So that'll smooth out as well. Looking at overall surplus, a slight surplus for the year to date, about just under 200,000. That's a little bit less than last year. Again, timing is the reason for a lot of that. And that 6.6% increase year over year on expenditures, a lot of that is related to that payroll timing. Here are your transfers. Transferred out about $2.5 million for capital projects, and a small transfer in for a net of $2.3 million. And since 2021, you have allocated a little over $21 million for capital projects. Here's your fund balance composition. We have preliminary December numbers in there. Those are likely to change a little bit as we go through the remaining audit process. We did make one small change to this slide. We split out operating results versus transfers for capital so that it's a little bit easier for you to see how we're doing operationally versus transfers. So year to date, total fund balance is a little over 17 million. That is after we've made all the transfers that you approved in the budget, the 2.3 million net. Still reporting your reserve at the 16.7%. That's about 12 million still. And total unassigned fund balance, bottom line, is about 2.8 million. That is the January report.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much for the presentation. Any questions for members of council? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
On the marijuana tax revenue, it shows it's down, looks like 20% from January 2024. What is the reason behind that in terms of market trends, or could some of it be chalked up to our tax on that? Is our tax too high, or is that just trends in the market?
Overall, it's a trend in the market. We did a council request just last month comparing us to others. There's a big group of cities that are about the same as us as far as taxes. We're a little bit less than Denver, but Denver in particular and statewide are down about 40% from their high in 2021. We're not quite that far down, but pretty close. So,
very good. Thank you.
Kevin, I had a similar question. Do we roll up that 83,000 into the sales and use tax overall number? Where
Yes,
it's
we
43
do.
million? Does it just roll up into that, or
yes, it does. Yeah, we
And
don't
so-
budget separately for that line, for that part of sales tax.
Okay, perfect. All right. Member Ward and then Member Prank.
So as of January, we have a surplus of nearly $200,000. In years past, we've seen that sort of even out over the course of the year. Is this a sort of a leaping out of the box in January, and we were expecting to catch up over the years? Because if I recall, the budget that we made predicts not this outcome.
Correct. Yeah, we're still predicting, and the budget did as well, that we'll draw down. We'll have about a $2 million deficit for operations.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, it's most likely a timing just from 1 month of operations.
All right, Member Prank.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question on the franchise fees. I learned a little bit more about it today, so I'm going to ask a question, and I'm just educated enough to be really dangerous. Can you tell me how that works for the city, like what the franchise fees are, and do we use a traditional, I guess, defined franchise fee, or have we looked at or considered right-of-way fees versus franchise fees?
So franchise fees are, I believe, and city attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe those are based on our agreements with the individual companies. So like Comcast, Public Service, AT&T. I think this language is pretty standard between them. I think it's 3% is what we negotiate with them. They negotiate some other terms, but I think we have a set fee for that, for all of them. Is that what you were?
It does answer my question. Just as I was learning today, I've seen that some cities have moved to more of what they call a right-of-way fee, so that there can be an avoidance of the reduction of revenues coming in based on like hard equipment and space being used, and more, I guess it would more align with current day technology and how things work. And so I just was curious as to whether we've continued to see that go down, and if that was something that we would look into.
I don't know that we have in the past. It certainly could be something that we would consider. You're thinking more of a fixed rate versus tied to their revenues, which is what it is now.
Can you say that one more time and a little louder?
Would you thinking of more of a fixed rate for these agreements instead of tying it to their overall revenues, which is what we collect now?
No, I don't know enough
Just an
about
option,
that
yeah.
component of it. I just know that some cities have seen a reduction in revenues because of how that fee is structured. And so I think it's worth exploring to look at, you know, whether we can keep that a steady source of revenue and not have reductions there if we reformatted how the fee is implemented.
We can certainly do some research on that.
Thank you.
Member Russell?
Thank you, Mayor. This is just kind of out of curiosity. Under property tax, it shows $4,000. Is that a carryover from last year, or why do we have it? Because they don't even start charging property tax until the end of this month.
There's 2 months that we collect almost all of our taxes, but occasionally someone will pay a piece every month just to they can't afford all of it. Or there's a little bit of revenue that comes in every month.
Okay.
About 90% of it comes in the
In those
2
two,
months.
okay. All right, thank you.
All right. Any further questions from members of council? All right. Kevin, thank you very much for the report. Everyone, do we want to take a break now, or are we good to just keep moving? Should we just keep moving? Is that good? Let's keep moving, and then if we need to take a break sometime between this next item, we will. But yeah, Kevin, we got the 2024 mid-year review of the capital improvement plan. There's about three divisions that weren't covered last time. So Kevin, do you want to introduce the leadership team and pick up on the CIP projects?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we did the first part of this in January, and we weren't able to fit everyone into the time frame that we had. So we have 3 departments that are going to report tonight. That's Public Works, Utilities, and South Platte Renew. Just one housekeeping item. We did ask in the January report that you give us feedback on anything that you'd like to see differently or additional information. We're going to ask that again tonight. If you see something that you'd like added to the presentation format, please let us know. And I will turn it over to Director Rochelle for Public Works.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us here tonight. So we'll go over the Public Works capital projects. What you have on the screen now are a request, and I believe it's also repeated at the end of the presentation, to move some funds to the appropriate CIP buckets. So what you'll see on the screen under road and bridge repairs is an adjustment to move that to pavement maintenance by area. The road and bridge repairs, that's actually the material that we use in maintenance, and so we felt it was appropriate to move that to the maintenance repair by area, thereby allowing us to extend that contract and get more roads completed as part of that project. Jumping into projects, so we'll run through these. First up is the Dartmouth Bridge project, which I believe everybody is very familiar with. We are approximately 90% complete with widening on the south side to take place, and then we'll be able to stripe and complete the rest of the project with the goal of wrapping that up next month. Next is the Walk and Wheel plan, also known as the Rail Trail. It does have ARPA funds in it. We issued a contract to OTEC Engineering in June of last year. They are in the process of design now. That will bring the rail trail to 30% by March, and then from there we will look to advance the final project. And that does appropriate those ARPA funds, and we'll expend them as necessary. Next up is the Dartmouth Traffic Calming Project. Design plans are at approximately 95%. We're coordinating with CDOT to get those out to bid for final approval, as well as with RTD. And then Broadway right-of-way beautification. So this project is tied into some of the other Broadway elements and, banners, light poles, and things of that nature along the corridor. Next up is the downtown overhead light design. This project is a collaboration with EDDA. We're working with them and trying to determine an appropriate lighting opportunity for these funds such that we can roll it out for the summer with the goal of having a plan in place with the EDDA in the spring of this year. Next up is the Broadway Streetscape project, which recently came before council for an update. We are at approximately 90% design on that, looking to hold another open house as discussed, and we're hoping to have construction plans out to bid in the spring or early summer for that project. Again, predicated on the utilities component being done first. This will dovetail right into that. Up next is the Old Hampton Complete Streets. Sorry, this is where the utilities are at. Again, at 90% complete, and planning to bring that to bid at around the same time in the spring so we can get going on the construction. 285 congestion mitigation study, that did wrap up last year. You will see there is a budget to be returned and excess funds. We completed that with CDOT. That study is available on the city's website. Next is the Dartmouth multimodal safety improvements. Again, we're at around 95% complete there. We are finalizing some right-of-way acquisition over by Tejon for ADA ramps and traffic signal construction, and we'll hope to have that out to bid here in the spring as well. That project was complicated due to a power pole relocation last year due to a 18-wheeler accident that impacted where the traffic signal poles and things like that could go. The Hawk Signal is the next project. Again, we have lots of projects in the 90% range of being complete. We're providing direct power to that project. We evaluated solar. We were hopeful to go down the route of solar, although feedback from other jurisdictions that have tried it when it comes to pedestrian safety, the concern was if we had several days of low light and that didn't function, so we pivoted and or moved towards a hardwire power feed for that for safety reasons. We hope to have that out here next month as well for bid. I will note on that one, traffic signals do have a very long lead time for materials to get the poles fabricated and delivered. So we're evaluating opportunities to advance that with the bidding process, whether the city purchase them outright and provide them to the contractor as opposed to waiting for the contractor. We may be able to shave a little bit of time off from the construction side. Up next is the Dartmouth reconstruction west of Santa Fe. So there's some partial paving that was completed in November of last year. We're going to complete the remainder of that in the 2025 project. That is the plan for that area. That way we have a new bridge and new paving in that area. And then we have next the Union Avenue Bridge rehabilitation. We're going to be replacing the deck on that, and we brought forward for council consideration the contract to have that designed. That was approved and is advancing, and construction could commence on the deck replacement as early as 2026. Oxford Ped Bridge, again, another one we brought to council recently. That contract was awarded, and we expect that contractor to begin work in April with the flat work and then materials on site. Again, this is the match on line 14 of the Ped Bridge. That is a grant project, and we have developer contributions as well. Union Avenue repaving, line 15. Design is 90% complete. We have discovered Xcel Energy has a gas line that is shallow. There are also water lines in there that are not city water lines, so we're coordinating with those jurisdictions as well to make sure that they're deep enough. As you can imagine, that section has a lot of truck traffic. So the design for that section of pavement was redone and is substantial to withstand all the truck traffic and keep it from falling apart. So the utilities need to be at the appropriate depth. And with that, I have more to go, but we'll pause there and happy to answer questions on that first batch.
Thank you very much, Victor. Member Noonan-Kemp, go ahead.
Thank you for a mid-presentation pause. The piece of this that is, one of the things that this is the most helpful for me is to see the start year and the end year, to see how long have we been talking about some of these things. And the East Dartmouth traffic calming project is in my district, and I've heard a lot from residents who are very concerned about the traffic. And I was going through my emails, and I have emails to constituents saying construction will start in 2022, and then another one saying construction will start and be finished in 2023. And here we are now in 2025, and we are still at a design phase. Can you just refresh us, why is this being delayed so significantly? And seeing that we are halfway through all of the projects, are we trying to do too much capital improvement all at the same time? Can you give us a picture of how this all fits together?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of components there. Specific to that project, I believe it's been about a year ago, we presented to council. We actually had to remove a roundabout due to budget constraints. There were 3 total. There's a traffic signal in the middle. That signal was going to be converted to a roundabout. However, the data did not support that being an absolute requirement. It was going to be done for consistency. So that project was delayed due to a number of things. One was a budget for the 3 roundabouts, and then feedback from CDOT with redesign to complete that. To the bigger picture, I would say turnover in staffing has certainly impacted the ability to push all these projects forward. The engineering team inside Public Works is 100% staffed, and we have been consistently 100% staffed now for probably a little 6 to 8 months or longer. But we did have some turnover in 2022 and early 2023 with project managers changing, and as you can imagine, if there's a specific project manager on a project, they leave, we have to backfill the position, get that person up to speed. Staff try to jump in and add that to their plate to keep the ball moving, but they're not able to give it the same amount of attention as a dedicated project manager for the specific project.
That's helpful context. Thank you so much. And just as a follow-up, do you think, when we approve a capital improvement cost, because this is what we think it's going to cost, we believe a bid at the time, and then a lot of time goes by and now costs have increased and now we can no longer do the project as it was originally scoped, are we essentially paying a tax on delay? And if we were able to execute things on a quicker timeline, would they be closer to what we initially thought?
I would say that's a fair assessment. As time goes on, inflation continues to erode away at the cost of things. We do try and build that into the cost projection when the engineer's estimates are done and saying, okay, if we build it in 2 years, we include this amount of inflation to the cost so that we have a number. But yes, the longer it delays, the more things increase in cost. We did see, I'll call it an exponential increase in costs 2020 through probably early to mid 2023, that has seemed to have leveled off. A good example is the the Oxford pedestrian bridge actually came in under the engineer's estimate, which was a good sign.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Member Wright.
Thank you. A lot of information here.
A lot of projects, yes.
So I'm looking at this front page here.
Okay.
And I have to look through the numbers to find out exactly what projects you're looking through. So I'm looking, pavement and maintenance area, road and bridge repair materials. I'm thinking Union in my head automatically, but it's actually the Oxford pedestrian bridge. So I think if we had a little bit more clarification on exactly what project, you have a very busy department with a lot going on, I think would help us a little bit. One of the questions I have also is the Union Bridge. I mean, for that to me, it'd be outside of what you're putting here, but the question for me is, what area is that? I drive that area often, it's my area of town. I drove it tonight, and not on the bridge area, but if you go a little bit east past that bridge, it is tore up. I mean, you have to go the other side of the street to avoid the potholes right now, and I understand probably want to, do a little bit of maintenance, but you don't want to do a ton and spend all that money. So is there in this budget the maintenance, and that's what I was looking for in here, the upkeep, so we're not getting claims of alignments and tires that have been flattened because of a 8-inch pothole that there's currently on Union. So is there budgeted for current maintenance on this while we're waiting to fix that road in general?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilmember Wright. So that would actually come out of the front page that you mentioned, the Road and Bridge Materials Program. So that's the materials that we purchase when our team does patching. So our team would be patching that. I will say under line 15, page 7 of 14, is the Union Avenue repaving.
Right.
And that is from Santa Fe to the bridge and is a top priority for us to get done.
Okay, but we're so end of year this year, but I was looking at something else where it said Union 2026.
That's probably the bridge. That's going to be a little further out to do the
Okay.
bridge itself. But that section of pavement that you mentioned there will be much more robust to address the amount of loading that you see from those heavy trash trucks, concrete trucks, everything going down that stretch.
It's a lot of industrial, I
It is.
understand.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a quick wait for me to get on Santa Fe, so, okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Member Ward.
Similar question, somewhat related to what Member Wright was inquiring about. This transfer from the materials budget into the pavement maintenance budget. Essentially, what we're doing is moving money from city crews to contractors.
Correct. The roadway pavements by area is our milling paving project.
And the contractor purchases the materials for all of those projects.
For their projects, yes.
And are we confident that that is the most efficient use of funds? I understand we at one point, and maybe still do have, a pretty large road milling machine at the service center, which may or may not be in operable condition. And some time ago, we moved from a model by which we did this maintenance ourselves to a model that we're now using contractors. Is there analysis, or has an analysis been done on the efficiency comparison between those two methods?
Not recently, to my knowledge. I will say there was an analysis on repairing the rotomill machine and the cost to repair it. It was a combo with Littleton. The repairs versus the value add showed that it was not worth repairing. They were so substantial.
Okay, so at this point, it would basically be surplus equipment that we need to find
Correct.
some means of disposing of.
Correct.
Okay, I think that answers my questions. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Member Russell.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. So my question on that repurposing capital projects sheet, why did we not spend very much money under the pavement maintenance by area? I mean, well, actually, we had $1 million left, right? And then we're adding another 731,000. So did we not do the projects that was budgeted for?
Correct. We are collaborating with the Utilities Department on lead service, and want to make sure that we're doing roads after they're through the areas. So we did not do quite as many roads last year in coordination with our utilities team.
Okay, so that money is still going to stay in pavement maintenance?
Correct. And if I, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
If I could add, we do have the sales money that came in, so we expend the sales monies first for pavement maintenance by area, and then we spend through the CIP money as well. We did spend all of the sales tax money allocated for paving in 2024.
Okay, well, all right, so all the sales tax, that's the extra money that they approved, that the voters approved. I don't know, on page 2, or the 2 of 14, I don't know why I have this there. The 69,551, or maybe it's the one up above. Have we not started the East Dartmouth traffic calming? That's what you talked about with Councilmember Noonenkamp.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct. And then I think that's all that I have right now. But one thing I'd like to remind council, the wheels of government turn slowly. The Dartmouth Avenue Bridge probably started back way in 2009 or 2010, and it just kept coming back and coming back for the reasons that have already been enumerated. Thank you.
Yeah, Jim Winward likes to remind us of that as well, so.
We're almost done.
Yeah, we'll get there. Victor, quick question. So number 2 of 30, well, it's 1 of 14 on the pages, but this is the walk and wheel plan implementation by area. So obviously the walk and wheel plan is a bigger plan overall for the city, but this one is talking specifically to a portion of the rail trail, correct?
Correct. And the rail trail is part of the walk and wheel plan, but that was selected out of that plan and advanced.
So the 638,000 is for that specific part of the plan?
That is the available funding. I would have to double check the amount. I believe the contract for the 30% design is the plus or minus 500,000 of ARPA funds.
Yeah,
including all the survey.
Yeah, because where my confusion lies with like an area like this where it's part of a larger plan, we're talking about a specific segment. So when we're talking about an end year in that specific item of 2025, it's just for that segment, but there's still other pieces of the walk and wheel that are happening. I would have to go back to our notes from the January presentation to find out how that kind of coincides with some of the other departments, how they're looking at longer term projects. Just because for me, that's where I was trying to understand. Because the other one that I was thinking of, like the East Dartmouth traffic calming. Like we've had citizens talk about other portions of East Dartmouth that we would have to fix. So that would be another segment that we would add as part of the CIP, and how to make, for me, it's just like to understand what it is that we're talking about to make it transparent for people that are just tuning in to kind of understand it. That's where I'm trying to figure out how this can best be laid out. Because the 2025 end year does not really stipulate what the end year is for the project overall. So that was just one of my comments. It's not really a question, but.
No, thank you for the feedback. We are, as you're aware, spinning up discussions about the 2026 budget. ETAC will be making a recommendation to council around CIP, and I anticipate walk and wheel to be one of those, and we'll try and provide that clarity with that request.
Last question on the walk and wheel. So that 30% plans expected by the end of March. Oh, so those are 30% plans, right?
Correct.
Is that what, okay. All right, that was all my questions then. Anything else for Victor? Go ahead, Member Russell.
I just wanted to ask, this hawk signal, is that on South Broadway down here downtown?
It is, yes. It's replacing what's currently known as a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, where it just flashes. The hawk signal actually requires, technically state law requires anytime you step on a sidewalk to stop, but this will add the red, green, yellow stop for traffic.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, no further questions on these items. Victor, you got another one? Go ahead, Kim.
That hawk signal, I know there's been discussions on something like that on Oxford.
Correct.
Is that in the 2025 budget, or are we going to be adding it to this plan?
For the Oxford,
Yes.
the Oxford is a Safe Routes to School grant. We have not heard back on that yet. We do hope to hear back on that next month, based on the schedule.
Okay. And do we have a plan B if we don't get that grant, or we'll cross that path? when we get to-
The plan would be to potentially come back for a supplemental request.
Okay.
And go from there.
All right. I know that's important to a lot of people, so. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Victor. Next
All
items.
right. Go to the next round here. All right, so up next, moving into more the facilities side of the house, we have the badge system replacement. We do have an RFP that's been completed. The selection committee has rated, or is rating, the proposals in-house, and we hope to bring forward a selection soon. That's been coordinated and collaborated with IT as well as PD. Line 17 is the ADA audit of the city facilities. This is coordinated with the city attorney's office and the ADA transition plan that's in process. Next, backup generators. As you may recall, we did apply for a grant last year. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful in that grant opportunity. And budget was approved for an additional $925 for backup generators. We will be going out for RFP here shortly with the primary goal, first installing a generator at the service center, which does not have one. That does provide fuel for all city vehicles. It has our fleet. That's our priority. PD does have a generator. And then once service center has one, and depending on budget, we'll then look for secondary facilities to add generators to within the city. Any
All right.
questions on those?
Any questions on these three items for Victor? All right, not seeing any questions, Victor.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on to the next ones.
We'll keep moving. Up next, line 19 is the South Englewood Drainage Plan. This is a 50-50 split with Mile High Flood District. We did bring forward an amendment in October of last year that was approved, and we're currently coordinating with Mile High Flood District to wrap this study up and understand any outstanding improvements that are needed within the basin, and expect that analysis in the April timeframe. Next is the Dry Gulch and Harvard Gulch master plan and associated improvements. Again, we brought forward an intergovernmental agreement amendment in October of last year, and this is prioritizing things that are already in the master plan to select a design consultant and get to construction. This is being managed by Mile High Flood District with the city as a partner in that process. Line 21 is the South Englewood Stormwater Improvements, which is under construction, and we are moving right along with tunneling and completion in Rotolo Park. We're about 70% complete and hope to have that wrapped up by the end of March, and then we move into stabilization phase. We have to get the grass grown in the ponds over there off Navajo and things of that nature, and we've been collaborating and coordinating with our Parks Department on a lot of that. Line 22 is the Hospital Old Hamden project. This is kind of that make ready for the complete streets. This is the utility project, water lines, storm lines going in, larger storm line through that area. A lot of heavy collaboration with our business partners in the corridor, as well as the hospitals and the utilities department to make sure that everything is done safely, efficiently, and no one is out of water. We expect to wrap this one up hopefully in the fall timeframe, and then the complete streets will immediately follow.
Member Ward.
A couple of questions, starting with the drainage way plan. What accounts for the $100,000 savings there? It looks like it's $100K under what we planned.
Sorry. For South Englewood Drainage Way?
Yes.
Yeah. So in that one, we're still working with Mile High Flood District, so that's an estimated savings at this time. Once the analysis is finalized and their consultants are all buttoned up, we'll be able to realize those savings. So that's where we are today and where we estimate to go. And that's a function of the data that we have available, we've been able to provide to the consultants so that they're not having to reinvent the wheel.
Okay, and then I guess a somewhat related question on the South Inglewood stormwater improvements, which happen to be taking place in my district, District 4. When I look at the numbers there, it looks like that project could come in significantly under budget?
I believe that's a timing issue. We are evaluating some change orders that have come in from the consultant, or the contractor, excuse me. Just as an example, during the boring, they hit some unspecified soil conditions, and so we're working with them on that. And there are a number of other things. We are looking at maybe adding some handrails that weren't originally in the design for safety and things of that nature. So
But certainly that wouldn't be $5 million worth of stuff.
I don't believe so. We're expecting that to come in at budget, maybe slightly under, but I don't believe it's going to be 5 million under.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions on these items? All right, Victor. Next section.
All right, next section, again, back to operations and maintenance, so service center upgrades. We've got a couple of projects happening here. We've had to upgrade the electrical system. We're coordinating with the utilities. Utilities is on site. We've upgraded some lighting around the traffic facility. We've had to replace the main switch, which provides power to our salt dome, which is vitally important this time of year. And those funds are ranging 30 to 50,000. We do expect additional expenses coming. We have roofing repairs that are needed over the fleet garage. And then as we dive into the generator project, we anticipate the building itself is going to need some upgrades to come into conformance with code, given the age of the building and some of the electrical panels and things of that nature.
Victor, I think you skipped one.
Oh,
Did
did
you
I?
want to go back to curb and gutter and sidewalk repair?
Where'd it go? Oh, I did. Thank you. So yes, curb gutter sidewalk repair. This is a program. This is an annual program. And we are going to be going out to bid here shortly for that in 2025, focusing around our Zone 2 and completing those programs within the city. And then we have our sidewalk repair per area, kind of aligns with that. And again, moving in 2025, this is replacing damaged areas and was approved by council in November of '24.
Member Ward.
More of a long-term question in regards to the service center. You mentioned how that building is not necessarily up to current code. It's been in use for quite some time. And it's not a building that our citizens regularly visit, which makes the argument for replacement more difficult, generally speaking. But in your opinion, how much more money are we looking at investing in this existing building versus what we would be paying if we chose to replace it and modernize that facility in general?
I believe there's an opportunity to master plan the entire site, which would include the building, which would gain the city I'll call it a fair amount of efficiency overall. I believe we toured the site together. For those of you who've been there, there are numerous buildings that just kind of developed over time on a one-off as-needed basis, or so it would appear. To better utilize the overall acreage, it's over 12 acres. Not only for public works, but for utilities, PD. Numerous departments use the service center. There could be some pretty big opportunities to master plan that site. From a cost perspective, I don't disagree with you. It's one of those sites that is an internal use. So I think, I'd call it mid-range is probably a good opportunity to do that. I have recently started conversations again with my counterpart behind me about picking up the master planning discussion again and getting that going.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Member Russell?
Mayor, if I could
Oh, yeah,
also
go ahead.
add to that, the other opportunity that we've had just really in the recent months is in looking at our the old fire station at Tejon. We think there's an opportunity to move some of the work that's going on in the service center to that building. And so Public Works has presented a plan for that. The leadership team has said we don't have other uses for that. And as you know, it's been a kind of a problem. And more recently, it's been a break-in problem where because it's vacant, it's getting broken into. We're not terribly interested in renting it out again and having some of the problems that we had the last time. So by freeing up some of that space, it allows us to reconfigure the space within the service center. And instead of a $20 million new building, we could potentially spend, $1 million retrofitting and getting that facility, something that we can all, that our employees can be proud of, even though it's not a public-facing building, and do a lot of good there.
Thank you.
Member Russell?
Thank you. So I have a question on your curb and gutter repair. The traffic circle down here at Cherokee and Inglewood Parkway, the south exit, and I really wish you'd check all the exits, but I know that when we go off south on, or north on Cherokee, north on Cherokee from that circle, the curb is all chewed up in big hunks. And really probably the island where the traffic off of Inglewood Parkway going onto Cherokee, going north also. They may have fixed that one recently, I don't remember. Can that be fixed in the projects when they're doing that?
Yeah, we'll absolutely evaluate that. They did repair the east leg of the roundabout when they paved last year. We paved that part of Inglewood Parkway. Typically, when we pave, we evaluate all the curb and gutter and want to make sure it's all fixed at the same time, so we're not tearing up new asphalt to repair curb and gutter.
Okay.
But I'll check with the team and we'll absolutely evaluate that.
It's more the center island
Okay.
piece. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Not sure who lights next. Is it Member Wright or Member Prang? Member Wright and then Member Prang.
The lower end of the alphabet goes first for a change. Thank you for answering all the questions.
Absolutely.
Zone 2, southwest, is that far southwest, like west of Federal, or different part of the city?
I don't believe it's that far west. I would have to double check for you though.
Okay. And in looking at the concrete, does that include making sidewalks ADA accessible, where they're not the tiny little ones, where you're widening them for wheelchairs, walkers, and that type of thing? Does that include that, or just making them safe to walk?
The repair by area is generally replacing broken sidewalk if it's a big piece, or heaved pieces of sidewalk. It's not necessarily widening to meet ADA. We do have other funds where we try and fill in missing sidewalk gaps. And that would generally be something to cover kind of what you referenced.
Okay. I had another question, but it just left me, so it wasn't important. So if it comes back, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Member Prang.
Thank you. Quick question. This is more of a process question, so I don't know if you can answer it or maybe city staff can. So when we have a project that's listed on the capital improvement plan, and that has been vetted and goes through the P&Z process and then comes to us, right? Because they make the recommendations. At what point, it just sparked my question on the service center, and you made some statements around there may be a lot of additional expenses such as roofing, et cetera. So we've got a project that we funded and that was recommended to us by P&Z at a certain dollar amount, and now you're talking, additions to that project. So is there a point in time where we keep this piece of it whole for what's been approved and we don't keep adding expenses onto it? Like, at what point would that be kind of become its own project under the capital improvement plan, honoring that process that P&Z uses to send forth recommendations to us?
Yeah, great question. I'll jump in, and then if city manager has something to add. So we actually did have a line item in the 2025 budget for the service center. I want to say the request was maybe around $500,000. That did not advance. And that was more on the replacement side, as you kind of spoke to, where the current line items are more the day-to-day maintenance. But there is kind of a tipping point, as you alluded to as well. You know, if we keep doing these repairs, you know, at some point, there's that break even of, is it better just to replace the building? And like you mentioned, we would certainly come back with a separate line item for that process. In full transparency, that is something we currently monitor very heavily on all buildings, including this one. Are the repairs, given long-term visions, something that we need to advance and invest into the structures, the buildings, the roofs, the AC units, all those kinds of things?
And I would just add to that we don't currently have, there's not a a service center line item right now that calls for these large-scale renovations or replacement that you and I are talking about.
Correct.
So it would have to be vetted through the Budget Advisory Committee, Planning and Zoning Commission. I don't think that would go through ETAC. That one isn't one that would go through ETAC. But yes, all of our boards and commissions, and then come back to you for approval. So you would get to see that. We're kind of speaking in hypotheticals about what could happen depending on, you know, how our analysis of that goes.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Member Wright?
So, unless I missed it, I guess no one has asked, I wouldn't be hypothetical. If you had to give a best guess, how much life do you think is left in the service center with patchwork?
You probably have a decade or more for the main building. As an example, we do have some buildings in the back that we will probably be taking down this year. Okay. The roofs collapsed, the walls are falling in. They're generally used either for super light storage or maybe not at all, given the condition. And these are probably some of the first buildings on the site. The main building still has a fair amount of life in it. You do have to do the upkeep and maintenance to extend that.
And then you have the salt tent, I think you called it.
The salt
where
dome, yes.
You have to make sure that's, you know, kept up. I also know that the service center helps sister cities, Sheridan, with their stuff. There's a lot that goes on at the service center. And we have to forward think on that, because if things happen, you know, I'm thinking this sign making, you get a leak, you can't make signs. There's a lot of stuff that wouldn't be able to happen. So I think, and the storage, the amount of storage is just, I wished I had that kind of storage. So I think we have to think about that type of stuff also. So,
yeah, thank you for that. We absolutely would. As you mentioned, we do have an intergovernmental agreement with Sheridan for fleet maintenance, as well as Cherry Hills Village. Both are there regularly with their vehicles, including snowplows and heavy equipment. And we charge them for our services, but we do maintain all of their vehicles.
And that includes police?
Recently, Sheridan took their police vehicle somewhere else. We do take care of Cherry Hills at the moment. Sheridan may be coming back. We're having those discussions.
Okay. So I think that just broadens how important you are to multiple cities. So, all right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, any further questions for Victor? All right, nice job, Victor. A lot of information, so.
Yeah, thank you. And I jumped past all that, and I believe utilities is up next.
We got Peter up next. Yeah, Peter, come on up. You're going to come and talk to us about that colorful waterfall slide. Very psychedelic. Thank you, Victor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I've also brought Sarah Stone, our Deputy Director of Business Solutions and Engineering for Utilities, as she is very well-versed in all these projects, both from an engineering perspective and a financial perspective. So between the two of us, we think we can get you the answers you need on any of these projects. So we'll start with just more of a how do we plan for projects in the enterprise funds, which are slightly different than the other funds in the sense that they are their own self-contained funds, that we master plan the projects for those funds. We then look at what kind of rate support we need and fee support we need in order to fund those projects. We try to strike the balance of rate increases that don't create rate shock to the point that we're out of whack with the rest of the Front Range, while also being able to execute a backlog of about 35 years of project needs. So the multicolored mountain graph, as we refer to it, shows basically the 3 zones of project execution that we're experiencing over from about 2020 through 2032. So historically, you can see generally is about $1 million or $2 invested in the utility on a consistent basis. Not a lot of projects of significance. We did the master planning, determined that there were a lot of needs, and then built up the funding to where you see the period of time from about 2023 to 2027 is the peak time frame of when we're executing that backlog of projects, which is what we have underway right now. And then moving into the 2028 to 2032 time frame of balancing those project needs, the funding available, the debt that we've issued to ensure that by the time we get to 2022, we've established a long-term sustainable utility that is investing on the order of about $4 million a year back into the system so we don't end up with the same issue all over again 20 years from now. So the way we fund or we plan projects, we have multi-year projects. However, we have to budget them annually. So we don't carry budgets over. And it creates a little bit of a challenge for us because we talk about capital projects in April and May timeframe. And so we're predicting the execution of that project that might be 15 months later in the next budget year, but it might be starting in Q3 of the budget year. And so we're trying to predict that future in terms of the timing of when we're executing our current projects while also bringing on new projects. And so we have invested a lot of time and effort heavily into forecasting because in order to ensure that we're spending the appropriate amount from a capital perspective on an annual basis, we need to be forecasting regularly to ensure that that our predictions are coming true in a way that we, on one hand, don't underspend too far, but also so we don't overspend to the point where we exceed the appropriation. So we're constantly balancing that with numbers that are sometimes as old as 15 months ago. So what does that look like? We've built a forecasting model. This is Sarah and her staff have built this. And essentially what it does is it takes every line item, it moves it into the line item budget on a monthly basis, it moves that information into a dashboard that then plots out our expected expenditure rate and the accumulated expenditure rate and the actual expenditure rate to see, are we ahead of schedule, are we behind schedule, are we under budget, are we over budget, so that we can project into the future how our projects are actually executing based on that need. So as we were thinking from the first half of this overall capital presentation back in January, when we left that meeting, we realized we were coming back. Sarah and I got back to the office and said, well, how can we articulate these multi-year projects that are budgeted on an annual basis in a way that accounts or that illustrates the fact that we're predictively trying to execute the amount in the year, but also then planning for some of it to not get done, and how we do that. So we turned them into a set of graphs that we're going to go through on each one of our projects. Please let us know if this is helpful or if we should make some changes, but we try to represent it visually. So we'll start with the first project, which is our space improvements phase 1. And so these are the improvements to the Allen Water Treatment Plant. If you've driven by the plant lately, there's a new area that's essentially above what used to be the roof of the clear well. If you drive by the plant, if you see all the peach tones in terms of the paint colors, and then you see a nice gray tone that looks modern and not peach, that's the new part. Eventually, actually this year, our plan is to recoat the entire facility so it does have that same consistent
look. Plus, we got to fix some of the stucco and things like that because we've got areas where that's degrading. So this project started in 2022, and essentially when we determined that we had the needs for utilities, part of the master planning identified that we had a needs for staff. We ramped up on staff. I think we've talked about that in the past, that many of these programs and projects are now being executed with the appropriate level of staffing. However, we didn't have space for them. So we secured 4 temporary trailers. We are down to 3 temporary trailers as a result of this project. And then we have our space improvements phase 2, which will ultimately drop us down to 0 trailers and permanent space both at the service center and at the Allen Water Treatment Plant for a sustainable level of staffing well into the future. We don't see a need for growth. It might contract a little bit, but we think the spacing appropriately reflects the needs of the utility. So you can see in 2022, we spent money, then we budgeted for a total amount in 2024, which is the light blue. We actually spent $416,000. So then what we have to do, that was what was appropriated in 2023. So then what we have to figure on is that by 2024, when we were planning for 2024, we didn't know that we were only going to spend half in 2023. And so you can see where this cascading effects happens year over year. And we budgeted a total amount in 2024 where the expenditure is close to the total appropriated amount. And then there's a little bit that is a residual into 2025. So the total project budget is the top line, which is just under $3 million. And then you can see how we actual spend versus budget amount year to year to fully execute that total project budget over the time frame, but while also trying to predict that that amount year to year as we're budgeting. So that's the space improvements number 1. So that's a general overview of how we're doing this, and I'll run through all the projects, and then if you have questions on specific projects. Combined with the space improvement projects, we had a blower that needed to be replaced. So we coupled those 2 projects together. Total project cost is just over $700,000. Began the design effort in 2023. The bulk of the work was done in 2024. However, there was a delay in getting it installed by the contractor. So we have a residual amount that we're planning for in 2025. Part of that is because we've held some invoices because we are expecting the contractor to follow through on some of the punch list items. Space improvements number 2, this is the second component of ensuring that we have long-term space. So this includes a new space at the Allen Water Treatment Plant, as well as an expansion of Building 11 at the Service Center. So I know there's some discussion under Victor's presentation about the Service Center. So we have a building on the north side of that property. It's a metal building. From a garage perspective, good building. So we're going to actually dress it up, repair it, work with the existing building. We're actually going to add a couple pull-through doors because we have some big trucks that it's hard to get them pulled all the way in. So we're going to put, so basically a door on either side so they can just pull right through. And then what we're planning to do and what we have designed is an expansion to the west that kind of follows the curve of that fence to have a modern set of locker rooms, bathrooms, some office space, a meeting room, a space for each one of the field personnel to have a workstation, and that will be an addition onto the existing building so that the whole building itself, when it's all said and done, will look new. Similar to what we did at South Platte Renew, where we took the old building, gutted it, modernized it, and then added the new wing onto it, and now it looks largely as a brand new building. We're taking the same concept into Building 11. So that will actually set up utilities to be will be set up such that whatever happens with the rest of the service center, that building will integrate well, and it won't be a building that we would in 5 years from now, tear down, because we would build it in a way that it dovetails into whatever the future expansion is or the replacement of buildings at the service center is. And so we've been conscious about making sure that we don't build buildings that, 5 years from now, we're saying, well, we need to tear them down because we're going to do this whole new other building. So you can see in that project, total project budget is just under $6 million. That's for the 2 buildings, the one at the Allen plant, the one at the service center. And we've been in design, and our bulk of construction we anticipate for this year. So you can see the budgeted amount, the approved budget amount of $4.4 million. We anticipate starting construction, we think in March or April timeframe is when we would expect that we'll be coming to council. We actually did, we were using a CMGC model on this. And so we did pre-purchase some steel because we had some price certainty, and we wanted to get the structural steel and some other elements on order so we could lock down the pricing on those. And so that was the GMP phase 1, and we'll have a GMP phase 2 coming in the next month or 2. EI&C is electrical integrations and controls. So these are all of our electrical components at the Allen plant and the associated pump stations. And so these are many of these components are well past their useful life. So we have more of a programmatic approach to these projects. The total program cost between 23 and 2028 is $6.2 million. And you can see on an annual basis the amount that we're programming in order to consistently invest over time. So this is one of those projects that we don't necessarily have the funds to throw $6 million all at once and do it all at once. Plus, we don't necessarily have the capacity to execute it all at once. But as we chip away at it year over year, we'll get to the point where those components are actually caught up, and we'll be able to be on a much more predictive replacement schedule such that we don't get far behind. Again, a lot of this is so we don't end up far behind once we make all these investments. Solids handling, this is our centrifuge that we are in the process of getting designed and constructed. So this actually presents an interesting challenge for us. The timeline to order and deliver a centrifuge is over a year. And so we ordered it last year. We will not get it until, I believe it's about 15 months after the time of ordering. And so again, when we're budgeting year to year, because that's how we can budget for this enterprise fund, we have to take into consideration that something may have been ordered in the previous year, but is going to be delivered in the next year, and you pay for part of it up front, you pay part for the second component of it. So that centrifuge should be in, I believe, in March or April timeframe. Is that right?
I believe the delivery now is June.
June. It's going to be delivered in June, and then we just actually received pricing on the installation, and then the last piece is a new dredge. And so this is the project that gets us set up so that we can be in a position to not get behind with the South Solids settling pond. So centrifuge, we use them at South Platte Renew. The contractor that we had utilized for the past few years used a centrifuge. It's a really efficient way to dewater solids, and we think we can make a lot of progress over the next few years to reestablish the volume of that pond. Denver Water Interconnect, this is a critical resiliency project for us, and the total project amount is about $3.5 million. This is 2 locations where we interconnect to the Denver system. It becomes a backup if we have a catastrophic problem at the Allen Water Treatment Plant. And if you look, we had originally anticipated doing most of the construction in 2024. We've experienced some delays with Denver Water's review and timing of when they will allow us to connect into their system. They were doing a large project on their system that they wanted to get through their project before we started cutting into their pipes. And so we're gaining progress on it to the point where we anticipate that the majority of that will be done in 2025. However, some of this might carry over into 2026, which is what we're estimating in that last bar there. AMI, Advanced Metering Infrastructure, was originally
conceived in 2023. 2024 is the bulk of the expenditure. The bulk of the cost of this project was buying the meters. And so we bought those in 2024. They're delivered. We have them. The remaining amount that's remaining in 2025 is actually the installation. So the installation piece with the contractor that installs them is actually far less expensive than the bulk purchase of all the meters. And so you can see that the remaining amount in 2025 is about $167,000. Total project budget on this is about $3.6 million. And we anticipate getting mostly through this project by the end of the year. As we've executed, we found that there are some locations where the meter access or the valve access is much more challenging on an individual house, so we're parking those off to the side, and we'll reprogram those separately from a funding perspective, either with a different contractor. We might work directly with the installing contractor or do some of that in-house. We're working through that right now. Clarkson and Hamden Booster Pump Station, again, this is a timing thing. We anticipated most of this to be completed in 2024. However, due to the time, and so this one's right next to the hospital. There's an underground booster pump station there. It boosts the pressure in Zone 2 in that area. And it's about a $1.7 million project. It was of the 4 pump stations we have, well, 5 pump stations, 2 raw water, 1 finished at the plant, and then 2 booster pump stations. This became our most significant priority because it does boost the area around the hospital and in the Zone 2 area, which is the higher elevation of Englewood. And so we've reprogrammed that money into 2025. You can see the total project amount of 1.7. Old Hamden Utilities, Victor's talked about this. The bulk of the work we had expected to be done in 2024, it's really moving forward in 2025. So we'll see that what we thought we were going to spend in 2024 is actually going to move into 2025. Total project budget on this is $2.7 million. It's a little bit under what we had originally anticipated, which is good. So we were able to get this under budget. City ditch piping, this project has been a multi-year project. We were working under a CMGC model on this project, and then ultimately, just recently, we took an off-ramp. And this goes back to something that Victor said, which was from about 2020 to 2023-ish, construction pricing was all over the map, and it was just exponentially increasing, it seemed, month over month. When we started this project, we were in that phase of pricing. And so as you execute a CMGC model, you're slowly developing the scope and the pricing. However, and you're doing that in partnership with the designer and the contractor because you've selected the contractor based on qualifications. However, if at a certain point in time the contractor's pricing does not come in competitive enough for what we believe the project cost should be, we can take what's called an off-ramp. And we did that on this project because we kept pushing on the contractor that this pricing does not seem reasonable. We used our owner's agent to help verify that. And ultimately, that we could not come to an agreement where they came down in the pricing. It exceeded our budget substantially. We didn't have the money for it. And so there's no risk to going to the market other than it does delay the timing of the project. You couple that with the fact that the middle reach, we were trying to work with the railroad and found that working with the railroad is challenging. And so we are going to work with the railroad by avoiding the railroad. And we've learned from other water agencies is that's how they approach it too. And so you can see that the timing of this is moving out, but we think this is an appropriate delay because we believe we'll get more competitive pricing if we go out to the market. So this is where we went from a CMGC model to an actual design bid build process. And so we use those different models based on the project and what kind of pricing we are getting. And if we don't feel like we're getting the best value for the project, we will take an off-ramp, which we did in this. Lead reduction program, we've talked a lot about this program. We are well underway. I believe we're right around 600 replacements, is that right? That are completed. And you can see the total project cost is about $31 million. We anticipate this to go through 2026, so we programmed it appropriately. Actually, in 2024, we spent pretty close to where we had anticipated. And in 2025, we anticipate that we'll get a lot of lines done this year, and then we'll have a residual amount in 2026, and that will be the full execution of the just under $31 million. Utilities billing system. So we added this project because we figured that the council would be interested in the budgets, the financials on this. So you can see in this, the project was originally signed, original contract signed in March of 2021. And in 2021, there was a lot of work done to build the system. And then you can see in successive years, we have held them to their contract, and we have not added more money than what we agreed was appropriate based on their justification and things that we ran across. So you see the total project budget has 2 ticks up, and those were approved amounts of change orders based on documentation of changes that were different than what was originally anticipated in the project. And so so what you can see in 2025, we still have a piece of this that has not been paid for because we have not been delivered the product that we were originally promised in 2020 to be delivered in 2022. We still have a punch list that has about 30 items on it that we are holding them to delivering before we pay them the remaining amount of their contract. Big Dry Creek. It's been a while since we talked about it, but we wanted to show what happens when we divert a project well into the future. So we spent a little bit of money on it and determined it wasn't the priority project for the time, but we moved it out to 2023. So it's not gone. It's just a project that we've deferred well into the future. And as we address some of the other priorities more in the more near term, we will reevaluate this project about 8 years from now. And then finally, we just presented the CIP in total for South Platte Renew without getting into the specific projects at South Platte Renew. In 2024, the total CIP amount was $18,874,000. Englewood's portion is 50%. And so you can see from 25, 26, 27, it's generally between 14 and 18 million that we have programmed on an annual basis. Last year, I believe we ended up at 95% spent for the CIP program. This year, we're actually forecasting that we're going to be under budget because we've had a couple projects that we combined some scope, which created some savings for us. We have another project that's underway in our SCTs that's ahead of schedule and under budget. And what we found is that our electrical pricing has actually stabilized and come down a little bit, which is good from where it was a couple years ago when pricing was all over the place. And so we believe that we'll be under in that 17 million this year. And so we'll look to reprogram some other things that we had deferred because we thought the projects were going to come in higher. And so there is the water utility and the sewer fund.
Peter, thank you very much for the presentation. Member Russell, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the presentation. There's a lot going on. There's one graph I would love to see in addition to all of this. What happens to the average water and sewer customer? What does his fee look like? Does it just keep going up? Or is there a point where it's going to level off? Is there any way to show how the payment for the average customer is just to bring all of these to completion?
So we can't, so if you recall every year when we bring our rate and fee proposals, we bring our comparisons to our neighbors. This last year we expanded it to include
districts that have an ad valorem tax that goes on the property tax, because that is essentially a way of funding the utility through the taxes, as well as we incorporated the stormwater fee, because stormwater fee doesn't always follow the same boundaries as some of the water districts. So we have that information year over year, and we can track that. We can provide that graph in terms of where we were in 2020 when our rates were really far behind, and where we are today. The way the financial model is set up right now is it anticipates that there's a predicted set of increases on an annual basis, and then every other year we increase that capital improvement fee by $1. So on 1 year we add $1, and then the off year we keep it flat. That's what's in the financial modeling that allows us to continue to execute the capital needs of the project, of the utility. I will also add, we know that in the 2031 timeframe that there is a structural funding challenge that we get into by the time we get to those outer years. And so that's 6 or 7 years from now. We have time to plan for it. But in order to create a sustainable model for the utility, we've gotten through those first 2 phases, which is the first period of underinvestment, this period of large investment with $100 million $80 million in the water fund of debt that we've brought in. And then what we still have to figure out, and we have about 6 or 7 years to figure it out, is how do we create that sustainable structural model moving forward such that we don't create rate shock for our customers, that we're still in line with the average customer for the Front Range, but we're also still annually investing in the system. But we can definitely provide you the graph of where we were to where we are today to where we potentially think we are in the next 4 years.
Okay, because my concern is, I saw, and I think this is probably coming before council in the next few weeks, and I don't remember what it was about, but it seems to me like 62% of the population in the city of Englewood makes under $75,000 a year. The property tax is shocking. And people are already, and I think we've kind of seen it, some of it really has been disguised as the problems with the billing and putting the meters on. But the truth is, what it is already, how many years ago was it that we started the 4.5% increase on water and sewer and the 5% on storm sewer? I think maybe in 2018, one of the water board members brought all of her bills and said since 2018 to now, her utility bill had increased over 50%. And it's not just this that is creating pressure on citizens. And I understand we need to do this, but at some point it has got to stop because people won't have the money. That's all that I'm saying.
And we look at that annually. And so what we're always looking at is those, I think we're up to 13 or 15 different districts and cities around us to make sure that we're not getting out of whack from a cost perspective. Our cost right now, based on a typical user who uses 2,000 gallons or 6,000 gallons or 10,000 gallons, stays in the lower half of that average when you look at in totality across the Front Range. If we go back to 2020, I think the average cost of the water and the sewer bill was $40 a month. And we were I want to say we were close to $20 under the next lowest one. And so we had the prior to 2020, when we started the actual rates based on the financial model, my understanding was the last time that the water rates had been raised was 2014, and then the last time before that was several years before that. And so if we don't keep up with a small predictable amount annually, then what happens is you get these large hits, and when you spend decades not keeping up with just the general cost of business for water as shown by what it costs in the Front Range, you get really, really far behind. And so I absolutely hear what you're saying in terms of not getting to the point where we're unaffordable. And so we're always trying to balance fix the utility, because we heard that from our customers, but also understand that our bills are keep going up. And so I appreciate the comments, and it's something we can definitely put the chart together for you.
And can we look to see where we're at now compared with what other utilities are charging when you do that?
Yeah, we actually have that. It was in our presentation last year for the budget. The one caveat I'll add to that is it was our predicted 2025 increased rates compared to their 2024 actual rates. And so if anything, what it shows is many of these utilities also had a rate increase. And so if anything, it shows that we were even, the 2025 rates were still in the lower half compared to these other entities that hadn't published their rate increases yet. But we have that information. We can forward that chart over. We can just do it as a council request. We can send that our current chart over, and then annually we draw from all the other websites and utilities to try and then reflect the current 2025 rates. That will take a little bit more time, but we'll have that for the discussions in April and May.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Member Wright.
Thank you. Thank you as always. Sarah, you're very talkative tonight.
I should let her talk a little bit.
I like the presentation. I ask one thing. I know that on the left-hand side it says projected cost, but on the top, that may not be a good one, where it says total projected budget, if you could put the dollar amount, you know where the solid line is to the right, if you could put the dollar amount next to that, that would be very helpful for me. I'm very visual and I bounce all over, so just one thing.
So for that one, so where it says total project budget, it's actually that in that third bullet, you see the second bullet down where it says 3 million.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, it's on the left, but it helps me even more if it was on that
If we labeled it
line
on the
for
line.
each slide, yes.
We can absolutely do
Because I'm
that.
going and highlighting and writing it there
Yep.
too. It just I have to see things over and over.
We can do that.
So, now I do have a couple of questions, and I talk to a lot of residents. They talk to people that work in utilities. If what they hear is true, I have no idea, so I ask the experts. So we're replacing the meters with the AMI. What I have been told by some people is that the city will be also replacing the meters that are in folks' house, basements, cellars, wherever, and putting their meters in the near future in their yard, getting them out of homes. Is this true?
In a phased approach. And so if it's a lead service line, yes. If it's a flat rate converting to a meter, yes. If it's a non-lead service line, or if it's a non-flat rate meter and there's an inside meter set, that's a program that needs to be funded, and we anticipate once we get through the lead program, we get through the AMI program, that we will then move into a multi-year funding program to move inside meter sets to outside meter pits. So that could take another 5 to 7 years to fully move inside meter sets to outside, other than the lead and the flat rate.
Okay, so something we're not even talking about right now, because folks are like, they're doing it now, then we're gonna, go in the yard, and what's gonna, I'm like, you know what, I'll ask the question, so, perfect. Okay, my other question, please, is, you're saying there's a punch list that we're working with, and the amount from the original contract in 2021 to current, what we've paid Cogsdale, I guess, has not increased a whole lot. So once all these issues are sorted out in that punch list of about 20, I guess you said, how much then is that amount that we're paying them going to jump? Is it a pretty substantial amount?
So we'll complete the original project scope of the conversion to the billing system as it is now. Once that's complete, we pay an annual maintenance fee that's part of the original contract, and I believe that right now is $130,000, is that right?
This year, it's about $141,000.
$141,000.
Okay.
We will be charged that annually. We were charged the maintenance fee. It's a software maintenance fee. So many softwares have these types of maintenance fees. For Cogsdale, that's what it's not just it's the base Cogsdale system, but some of the plugins that come with the system as well.
Right, and then if we have a change order or something like that, we'll be charged based on that according to the contract. So I just want to make sure, we have this amount here and then, everything's fixed, boom, here's a huge bill.
Yeah,
That's what I want to make sure we're.
So this was the capital portion of it, what we called capital. So the annual maintenance fee is more of the operating costs associated with the system. So those, by contract, that will also increase annually. And then, like you mentioned, if there's change orders, if we need to make additional changes to the system, then we will do that through that maintenance contract.
Okay, and I know that I have to compliment you and your team. There's been people that have called. I know that council members have sent emails. You have sat down and spoke to people and stuff. So I have to tip my imaginary hat to all of you on working with people and fixing things that have caused some of their issues and stuff like that. I've heard back from them, and thank you very much on working with those individuals and everything that you've. It's been growing pains, but I appreciate the professionalism of everybody, that what you have done, and we're not there yet, we're getting there, but I do have to acknowledge that, and I want to make sure people hear that out loud. So I just wanted to make sure that they don't just say, here's a huge bill, we're happy. I know that we can't turn the clock back either. At one point, is there a point where they've been given X amount of time, we could go to them and say, hey, there's a huge fee that we could hit you with for not living up to the expectations that the city has given you? Or we just have to muddle through this until it becomes correct?
So we've had a couple points in time where we've stepped back to ask those questions, and we've worked with legal to understand what the original contract language is, what we have the ability to do, where we have the ability to remedy things. And the challenge is this is one of the older city contracts that didn't necessarily have a tremendous amount of teeth in it. So the way we have, for lack of a better term, exercised the teeth of the contract is we've held them to the contract. And so there's a scope that was defined in the contract. There was an expectation that was defined in the contract. And as this is, developed over time, many projects that I've seen would just approve additional charges by the vendor because the project's delayed, and we have not done that. We have gone back and said, this is what the contract says, this is what you committed to. That's what while we don't have necessarily a lot of ability from a remedy perspective that we understand, we do have the contract that we can hold you to, and that's what we've done.
Well, and I think the blessing is we've had some huge contacts with our contracts with the lead service and stuff, and it's a lesson learned that, that's not happening again. So, okay, thank you.
I would say our contracts overall have gotten a lot stronger over the last 5 years. And I think our legal department, now we'll defer to Tamara on this, have done a lot of work in helping those contracts become much stronger.
Oh, I believe so. I don't doubt that for a moment, so thank you.
All right, any further questions from council? All right, I don't see anything, so Peter and Sarah, thank you very much for this part of the presentation as well.
Thank you.
All right, Kevin, are we bringing you back up for a recap on this? I think you just had some questions for us, right, in terms of when to bring you back, that type of thing?
Yeah, no, just if you have any feedback on changing the format or adding any additional information to what we presented, because we'll be back in July and on a regular basis every July during the budget process.
What we'd So you would be back in July for the budget process, right? So
Yeah, I believe council requested that, or agreed that that's the best time of year to do
Okay.
it while you're making decisions for the coming year.
All right. Any feedback from members of council? Go ahead, Member Nunekamp.
I'm looking for the page number. Can I defer to Member Prang
Yeah,
while
go
I
ahead,
get
Member
organized
Prang.
here?
Yep.
Thank you. You could have gone. So I think for me, I'm wondering how useful the current year variance column is. Because these projects are multi-year, and so looking at like a current year, and also like my understanding of what variance is doesn't really, I think, match up to what you're trying to say in this. I would have a preference to see like a total project variance at the end of a project when it's completed. And then perhaps like when we're adding money into a project. So if we're enhancing kind of what's been approved and brought forward to us and it doesn't become a new funded line, I think that's more useful information to me. I don't know how other members of council would respond to that. And then also, I feel like having, I don't know if we can capture this or not, but an original approved timeline, if you will, on the project. So we've got that good solid information on the beginning of the project and an anticipated end date. But I think for members of the public and just transparency, et cetera, and that accountability piece to say, we originally approved these monies for this period of time, and then we can clearly see in the charts as they're presented, whether we've gone past that anticipated timeline.
Yeah. And we've actually had internally some of those discussions already. We're working on getting more of a project length presentation for you. We're struggling a little bit with our system to give us those multiple years together, but we're working on that. We anticipate having something like that for the July report.
Okay, thank you.
Member Nunekamp?
Thank you, Member Prang, because that was very similar to my request, but maybe likely more artfully stated. One of the things that I think I would benefit from is in the project status, a little bit more description. It's not very uniform. So some things just say, yep, this is the next step, but it doesn't say it's actually 3 years later than when we thought it would be completed. And I think some of that clarity would be helpful. Additionally, you have the 2024 budget supplemental on the 2025 budget request columns. But I am curious because we're looking at this for the CIP, how many years have we funded this project, or how many years have gone by since the original funding? If it's before the 2024 supplemental, then it's not clear when we first allocated the funds. If it is it just the start year, or were there additional allocations after that? And again, just going back to when was the money set aside for this? What is the status of them? And if there has been a delay, more clarity and understanding about why there's been a delay, I think would be very helpful.
Okay, great.
Anyone else? I think I'm in a similar boat, Kevin. Just understanding exactly when the project would be complete overall. Because you really have to dig into it, because some of it is like the design is going to be done in 2025, but the project is going to be potentially done based on just additional questions that we asked, not until 2026 to 2027. So understanding that would help. Because I think the basis of this, at least the way that I look at this, is that when we are looking to identify where we are going to earmark funds for the CIP, like what have we done in the past that has been delayed, and can we understand that in order for us to properly fund CIP into the future? That's the way that I'm thinking about it. And so as much information that we can have regarding that piece, it's really just that, just understanding what the project end date is, or a completion date would be, when the project started. I think I agree with you, Member Pring. I don't know if that variance field makes as much determination for me to me, I wouldn't need that number, but just understanding more the end date and the start date, I think would be sufficient for me.
Okay. Good feedback.
Member Wright.
Thank you. I think to piggyback off, actually, everybody, if there's delays in that type of thing, that would be very helpful because we're like, why is this money sitting here? The centrifuge would be perfect. When I toured there about this time last year, I think we were expecting it late last year, and here we are, you know, even a year and a half later, and they still don't have it. And I think part of it is understanding, okay, has that money been paid, or how much of it's been paid a deposit, or is it sitting in what accounts? We have so many enterprise accounts and stuff, it gets muddled, I think. Where's this money? Where's it gonna be? It takes a while to understand that as a council, and there's a lot of people that do watch the budget because it's taxpayer money. So I think if there's clear understanding, okay, it's going, this amount has been paid towards this, it's delayed for this reason, but it is sitting in this account for this reason. And I think when we're going through this, if we have a lot of clarity, because it's just not for us, it's for the taxpayers also. And I think that would be very, very helpful. I think we're getting more and more information, but I think the more we have, the more helpful it'd be for everybody, please.
Certainly.
Anyone else? So Kevin, real quick, so what is coming back in July? Are we going through all of this again through July, or is it just the CIP as part of the 2026 budget?
It's going to be a combination of the two, so you'll know where your current projects are. And this is what council, I think, has asked for, but if not, let's clarify. And then some of these will require additional funding, or you might have the questions of why it's stalled. Can that funding be reallocated to something that you prioritize higher?
Okay.
While you're trying to make the 2026 decisions.
Okay. And so when I saw that, when I was thinking about it, what I would like to see are just the deltas from this list. What is being delayed? What additional funding is being asked for? If anything if there is no additional need for funding and the timeline hasn't changed, I'm not sure if we really need to speak to it. You can have it in the presentation. It's just things are on track. But for me, I would like to focus just on the deltas. But that's just my personal opinion. I'm not sure how anybody else thought of that from members of council, but that was just a thought. Go ahead, Member Noonkemp.
I'm thinking about the suggestion, which is certainly efficient. I would like to see it all. Maybe we highlight where there are deltas. But I think there are some projects that would be considered on track because they are currently on track, even though they are several years delayed from when we originally funded. So I'm worried about if we would lose some of the clarity on the definitions.
Okay. All right. We'll just remember this conversation in July and just see what we like and want to improve on in the future. So, okay. Anything else from members of council? Kevin, thank you, and thank you to members of staff for putting this all together and taking us through it. So, very informative and really appreciative. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're moving on now to reports from boards and commissions. Any liaisons want to chime in? Go ahead, Member Noonkemp.
A brief update from the library board, which met on Thursday. They had their first meeting with their new member. They received an update on the new staffing for the new library director, I believe, who started this week, I think, actually, and received an update on library usage and a special presentation on the volunteer program at the library, which we had so many volunteers in 2024 that it amounted to a part-time staff member that was free for the city. They're doing things like shelving and helping patrons, sorting books for the book sale. So an incredible use of volunteer hours to benefit the city.
Thank you, Member Noonkemp. Member Prang.
Thank you, Mayor. The Parks and Rec Committee met on February 13th. We had kind of just some of our standing agenda items, overviews of current projects, et cetera. But an exciting piece was one welcoming the new members and just onboarding them to how the committee works. Secondarily, the commission also selected a representative to liaison to the Bond Oversight Committee. So that person will participate in is it month, how often will they meet, Sean, do you know? It's the oversight committee for the Parks and Rec bond. Is it monthly or quarterly?
The Parks and Rec Oversight Bond, do you know their meeting cadence? We'll find that out,
Yeah.
sorry.
Not super important, but just exciting to see that the commission had, selected someone step forward, our co-chair actually, to attend those meetings and then liaison back to the commission so that there's, sufficient oversight, not only from city staff and their internal meetings, but we can hear that information back to the commission as well. So exciting times.
Thank you, Member Prang. Anyone else? All right, moving on to council members' choice. Anyone have anything for us tonight? Oh, I guess not. And city manager's choice. What do you got for us, Sean?
Thank you, Mayor. I've got about an hour and a half of information, if that's okay.
Get us back on track, Sean.
Right, we can't leave this early. No, I just wanted to, update you on some good work that staff is doing. Before that, though, I do want to mention that we do have a special events strategy that we're bringing to council for a study session that was a result of the discussion that you all had at the retreat. So we'll be doing that. I think it's in a month or so, Tim. And so just excited for the work that's going on there. I also wanted to report something that you happen to have received, I see an email on today, just with regard to downtown safety. And just kind of, my plan was to kind of brief you on what we were doing in that area. Back in November, as a result of the community safety, or the community survey that we did, seeing that downtown safety was a concern, Tim worked to create a downtown place safety committee. And so in November, that was created. The Downtown Development Authority, Inglewood Police, Community Development, our office, and Parks and Rec serve on that. And they've been really working to implement a number of strategies that I just wanted to brief council and the public on. First of all, was really identifying hotspots in that area. So those that have been identified for enhanced enforcement and tracking of activity are Little Dry Creek Plaza, also known as the Duck Pond, Inglewood Parkway between Broadway and Cherokee, the east and west Paseos on Broadway, and then Old Hamden. Once we kind of start wrapping up construction of the underground construction, we're going to be adding Old Hamden between Acoma and Grant Street for tracking and monitoring as well. But some of the projects that have been developed and tracked by the committee to date include partnering with the EDDA, partnering with stakeholders like the Inglewood Marketplace, to look at the lighting in their area. That was one of the areas that had low lighting. Even some of those are actually city lights that we own and maintain, and how can we better maintain those? That work has been done. We also have a contractor that's improved pedestrian lighting at Floyd and Broadway as well. We also partner with the EDDA to develop some arts and entertainment programming for some of those hotspots, and that's slated for the summer of 2025. And so excited about some of the things happening there. You may have heard that a Denver arts organization is going to, but they're right across the line on north side of Yale. Swallow Hill is going to be having their big Swallow Hill Music Festival in downtown Inglewood. So excited about that. That'll be in one of these hotspots on Old Hamden. We also have been engaged, continued engaging Inglewood Marketplace, conducting a safety audit of that area, and implementing a strategy to make sure that the bus stops, this is something we've heard from council, that some of our bus stops, particularly in the downtown area, just have not felt as clean or as safe as they should. So you've hopefully seen a lot of improvements, both working with our contractor as well as us and the Inglewood Police Department putting more emphasis on that. We also we've reported to council, but we are continuing what I'm sure police would not like me calling enforcement blitzes, but it's where we really have a concerted effort with the impact team, with patrol, a number of units that go into these areas, these hotspot areas, and do one day of unannounced, just very heavy enforcement in terms of, I shouldn't say heavy, just enforcement of infractions that they're seeing. So the first one, we contacted about 25 people. 12 of those people were charged or arrested. We had 6 suspects transported to jail, 5 with trespassing, exclusion notices, trespass notices, felony warrants, misdemeanor warrants, park rules. So we're using the full kind of scope of city code to really do some targeted enforcement. The second one on that one 911 resulted in 17 people that were contacted. 15 of those were charged with the crime or arrested on active warrants for things like drug-related trespassing, misdemeanor, restraining order arrest, just a number of items there. And then at a date not to be announced, but soon, we'll also be doing another one of those operations. So just really wanted to highlight some of the good work that's been going on and thank Tim and his committee for the work to really focus on these hotspot areas, and then police just for their ongoing work, but also these targeted enforcement days that are really kind of, we're seeing it change some of the behavior just because they know there's going to be periodically very intense kind of policing presence trying to make sure that people feel safe in the community. So be glad to answer any questions council may have about that or anything else.
Thank you very much, Sean. Any questions from members of council on this? No, don't see any questions. Just appreciative as well of what our police department and all the community, well, the DDA members of staff are looking to do to keep our city safe. So thank you very much, Sean. Anything else?
That's it.
All right, everyone. With that, we are now adjourned. It is 8:20. See you all next Monday. Have a good evening.